Hello guys, my name is Celtman and this is Fitness So Podcast, and today I'm with John Whittaker.
He's got it right.
Yes, again. Welcome to the show, John.
Hello. So the reason I think the reason Devin would say that from my workplace is that my reputation was about if someone's going to do something, to do it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of people would come looking for training courses that were sexy and nice things to do, but not necessarily going to make a business difference. So to me, that's not worthwhile.
Yeah.
And that difficult conversation was often what people didn't like, because I would ask the question, why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's the benefit to the organisation of you doing this?
And this was your role, isn't it?
That was my job.
To push the organisation further forward.
Because a limited budget, I would work out to have something around about £100 per person to spend on development activity, and that's not very much. So if someone comes asking for something that's £4,000, they need to justify that.
Yeah.
So it's simple stuff. It's just business economics.
And you're applying this to the coaching and to your life now? Or?
I think business coaching and sports coaching are exactly the same. The technicality things, the stuff that you would say, this is how you put your hand in the water, this is how you switch your computer on. And they're technical, but how someone responds to guidance and how someone responds to targets and objectives and goals, that's the same. So being able to say to someone, here's your outline objective up there, which is the big picture, and then here's all the process goals that you need to achieve to get there. You would do that in business, you do that in sport.
Yeah, and you do this in sport as well. Yeah.
And you then look at your process goals and say which ones of these are working for me and which ones aren't. So it's the same thing. So
in coaching, and as you've got amazing experience in coaching, and are there any things which a lot of people do and you telling them this? Like you picking up some things which are common to many people?
Yeah, there's lots of things that people do, and lots of people do things like spend a lot of time playing with gadgets, when really they should be spending their time working on their technique or their endurance or whatever. So they spend a lot of time thinking about, I need to do it like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at this rate and whatever. Whereas actually just doing it would be a good thing. Okay. So there's times when technology gets in the way for folk, and there's a place for technology in terms of recording things and then going back and looking at it. But a lot of people, they'll have a diary of all the things they've done, but they've never actually reviewed it. And they've never gone and looked to say what bit made the biggest difference.
And what was working, what wasn't working.
So if you do that well, great. But if you don't do it, what's the point? So my coach, when I was doing athletics, had me do a diary, and I had to basically say every day what I did, what it felt like, how I responded to it, what my feeling mood was for that day, what the weather was like, and we sat down every month and went through it.
And you can see what was happening with you.
And he would say, you've got a cold, or you're feeling ill that week. Look what happened to the training. Yeah, you trained through it. What happened the following week? What happened the following week? And they broke down 4 weeks later. So those kind of things, that's what effective diary management is for as a coach. That's what we should do.
But the gadgets are easier, isn't it? Because it's easier to focus, get your mind out of the pain, basically, and getting into this and thinking the numbers are showing me this.
But the numbers don't always show a true reflection of what's happening. So it's about playing with it and using it appropriately. If you're recording and then use it and review it, great. But if you don't review it, it's not really telling you much. And that's one of the things I would notice.
How about the programs like Strava or Training Peaks, which apparently shows you that you're improving or shows you
there's elements of that, but there's also, that's an ego thing, isn't it? So like turning up to a Wednesday night run on the meadows every week and being the one that gets to the front every week.
And trying to beat that.
And beating everyone. But does that give you the performance on the Sunday when you need to race? And that's what we need to think about. So I think Strava's great for being able to just looking where everybody is and recording distances and things, and it's a cool thing to play with. But people get a bit fixated by it, and they're too busy looking at where they are on the table. And then they go and do that next sector, and they go faster than they should.
Which one thing which you told me about the choosing the goals in the races was really important for me. Something like focusing on especially one thing,
Yeah.
not necessarily racing everything.
Yeah.
It's very good.
I think what often happens is that people get, sucked into the race, whereas if you're doing your D or E race, which is helping you towards your A race, then you do it for a purpose. And if your purpose is to go fast on the bike, that's what your purpose should be. Yeah, you'll do the rest of the race and you'll enjoy it, or you might not enjoy it because you've hurt yourself on the bike going so hard. But the purpose of that race was to do that sector. And maybe a B race is where you do the whole race going hard at it. But if you're looking at other races around the year when you're working towards your A race, they should be used to do things and experiment with things that you can do in your main race. And that's where I think that some things that people just race too often, and they race too hard.
And they don't spend time in training. And
they lose out because they've tapered off for a race, and their A race loses out because they've raced too hard 2 months ago. And that's just experience, I think. People get sucked into the enthusiasm of doing events and, it's brilliant, I've got this, I've done that one.
And that's why they need someone to look over them.
Maybe you need to back off a little bit and just think about where you're going. Because in September, when you go to your Ironman, you need to be absolutely the best you can be that day. And everything that you can control into it. You can't control the weather, you can't control what other people do, but you can control yourself getting there.
But then sport of triathlon it's something where I never met so many control freaks. I've done many different sports, and there are some, squash or handball, you cannot predict things. So you work as a team, and there's a lot of things can happen during the sport. And here you've got this, you're thinking that if you do this 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, like you said, you're gonna have this result, and and then injury happens, for example, or something.
And you always have to have a backup plan. So if you think, I'm not going to manage that event in September, I need to back off and think I could do something in October where I'll still have a good experience, and it might not be the one I wanted to do, but I need to think sensibly about where I am physically and mentally, and allow myself to do the best I can. And I think what a coach's job for any athlete is to make sure that when they go to the start line, they are physically ready, mentally ready, and they're comfortable with themselves about what they're going to do. And I think that if a coach can do that for someone, then that person will perform to the best they can. And all the other stuff is just getting there. And that's what we need to do in a plan. It's about thinking through, I've got a race this weekend, but all I'm going to do is swim hard. I'll have a nice bike ride. But it's training,
and it's just the training. It's not pushing through.
And I'll do really work on my transition in that part of the event.
Would you taper before the B race, for example? Or
it depends on what you want to get out of your B race. If your target is to swim, bike, run fast all the way through, then you probably need to taper a little bit.
Okay.
But if your target is to go hard on the swim or hard on the run, and hold back a little bit in the bike, would you need to taper for that? Because it's really just a training session like any other training session.
Okay.
So that thinking it through about what you use these races for, and they can be process goals or process targets all the way through to your main target. And that's probably quite difficult for people to do on their own. But if they've got somebody overlooking it going...
Even though I can do this probably for other people, it's many cases with the mentors. You need them only to tell you things which you already know. In many cases, I'm not saying that it's always, but sometimes it's just those things, but you don't apply.
And it's also just to ask the right questions.
Yes,
so
that's true.
If you're sitting down talking to me about something, and I say, "Well, how did that work?" That might just give you that little spark in your head to go, right, that's why it is.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's
all it takes, but this is needed. This is really necessary.
And I think you could go back to very basics, and it could be a straightforward. Here's a plan to follow, and I need you to follow every second of it, and that works for some people. It wouldn't work for me, and I think it wouldn't work for you either. But it will work for individuals who may be coming into the sport and just learning things, and that's what being an adaptable coach is about. So sometimes it's appropriate. You've got a bit of experience. It's more about directing the things that people know about already and getting them to think about it for themselves. Because
after all, it's coaching. It's basically working with people, so it's more understanding. You work in HR, isn't it?
I worked in training and development.
Yeah. So it's having this skill. It's amazing.
And it's just about people. It's about asking the right questions of individuals who will either buy into it or not. And if they think you're not, if you're just asking questions and they can't handle that, then you're not the right coach for them.
Yep.
So they need to go and
How
find
long?
a better
How long
coach.
you been? How long you been in sport? And I just switching the question.
Well,
switching.
I've been in sports since I was at school. I played football at a decent level at school. Played amateur football in the Southern Counties League in Scotland, we played in the Scottish Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Then decided to do some running to keep fit. So I've had something all the way through, and went to athletics club. Actually found that I could run quite well.
Uh-huh.
Athletics club asked me to do a couple of races. I won a couple, and things moved on to there. So athletics became my sport, and I spent a good 6 to 10 years competing at a decent level at national league in athletics, and then got an injury. Couldn't.
What's happened?
I blew a calf muscle.
Okay. Was it you've been pushing too much, or
I don't know.
It just happened.
It just happened. It was at the end of the season. I had run a PB in the 1500 meters, and I was doing the 400 meters afterwards, the relay, and possibly just my legs weren't recovered enough, and tried to kick off the bend, and bang, exploded leg. So although I can still run, and I could still run reasonably well, I couldn't train at the level I was training at. So triathlon, I could swim and I could ride a bike, so it made sense to have a go. And I've been in triathlon now for nearly 30 years, so it's a cool sport. It's got a great atmosphere about it. It's a real friendly sport. If I compare it to athletics, where middle distance runners spoke to middle distance runners, sprinters spoke to sprinters, field event people did what they did. And there was like little cliques all over the place. I don't see that in triathlon. I think triathlon has got a really friendly, sharing atmosphere.
Because you're always the worst person, if you're a triathlete. Like for me, if I go for a bike ride with the guys who are only riding, they're always better than me. And then the same with the running, the same with the swimming. And then your ego kind of goes a little bit down. You're thinking, yeah, there are people better than me, and after all, together, when you put this together, you are faster. But
yeah, when you look at the fast biker and you say, well, I could beat in the swimming pool, I can run faster than you, so you just have to accept that.
Yes, so you always got this in mind. So that's why you probably.
But I think over the years I've been involved in triathlon because I've done lots of different things. I've been involved in administration. I've done events. I've come across some amazing people, some absolutely incredible coaches, some incredible athletes, and everybody's willing to share. Talking to Katrina Morrison as an example, world champion duathlon, she'll share her knowledge. She'll tell people what she did. She'll help people get better. And that's a really cool thing about the sport.
It just shows you that
there's
the spirit in it.
And that's all across the board. I think someone starting on, like, for example, New Year's Day round here in Arthur's Seat, they'll ask lots of questions, and they can ask questions of the best athlete that's there, and they'll share that information. They won't say, I'm busy.
So do you think the sport is still growing? And
for sure, yeah, it's.
So this is the community which pushes.
Triathlon generally, if you look at the numbers who do triathlon now compared to 5 years ago, it's through the roof. You look at the number of people who are doing Ironman compared to what Ironman 10 years was. 10 years ago, it was a big deal for people doing Ironman. Now it's quite commonplace.
And you've got Ironman in every city.
Yeah, and there's 70.3. There's events every week happening in Scotland in the summer months. Across GB, across Britain anyway, you'll have probably 4 or 5 events every weekend. So, as a sport, it's got an audience. The performance level, the Brownlee brothers have done an amazing job of getting it onto TV in Britain, and people are accepting it now as a sport that most people can do. But it still has a reputation of being an endurance, hard-end sport. And we kind of need to break that a little bit to get people into the sport at the bottom end, if you like, of doing a novice race. Turning up and doing something that is 3 things. So I think as a sport, we need to kind of develop as much as we can at the bottom end.
So the novice is not about the distance.
The novice is not about distance. No, we've had a debate.
There was a debate. Yeah.
Novice is about novice. The distance is just, this is what a novice should do. So distance-wise, most people can cope with it. And if you think a sprint triathlon, the amount of training you need to do a sprint triathlon is about the same as doing a 10K.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone who's willing to go and train for a 10K,
They could do.
they could do a sprint triathlon. And that's what we need to break into, that kind of audience that are a bit scared. And I think that's a thing that, well, for Glasgow 2018, that's something that we'll be working on with Triathlon Scotland and British Triathlon, to try and engage with people who might not engage. And I think that's a pretty cool thing about the sport.
Will the Glasgow will open not to athletes as well, like the age groupers, or not
there's an age group championship, so the European age group championship's happening at the same time as the elite championship.
So you will be able to just watch other people as well.
Qualifying as part of that, people have to qualify for the team, and we're looking to do some kind of development event on the Sunday after the championship's finished. So there'll be opportunity for people.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's lots of things that we can do that will engage groups who previously wouldn't have ever thought about doing something multi-sport, and I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I've got that. It's getting colder a little bit, and this rock is not as comfy as you thought.
My rock is comfortable.
No, mine is not. I've got sticky out bones or something. Right. So there are 5 questions.
Okay, fire on.
They are very easy. No worries. It's like we answered one already. And why triathlons? Why do you think the triathlon it's good as a sport to do?
The key thing is it's inclusive. Anybody can do it. You don't have to be the skinny rake person who is the fastest in the field. The people who at the back end on New Year's Day who come along and it's their first event and they have such a smile on their face when they finish. Mm-hmm. It's just an inclusive sport. And the fact is you can do age group championships from 15 to 95 at world level is a pretty cool thing.
And you're still having, as you said before, this adventure sense of being outdoor and swimming in the open water, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, second one. The best race. What was your best race? Or I changed a little bit the question. Which race would you do again?
I've been thinking about this since we talked first on this, and there's a couple of races. And I told you a story about one where I think I ran my fastest 800. Yeah. And that's probably not my best race actually, because it was based around temper, and that's not a good thing. But I raced down in Alexandra Park, I think it is, in Birmingham at the stadium there, and it was a civil service British Championship event. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a massive field, and it wasn't a like top heavy best people in the world racing it. But I ran. This was an 800 meter race, and I ran a perfect race as far as I was concerned that night. It was bang on the pace for the first lap. Mm-hmm. I sat on the guy who was taking the pace all the way through in the second lap, and I knew when we got to 150 meters to go that no one was going to beat me. It was one of those nights when
you just knew.
There would have to be Usain Bolt to get past me. It was that. I knew I was going to get to the line first, and I crossed the line, and I knew I'd won, even though the guy was quite close with me, mm-hmm. the guy who was second, and I was never going to argue about it. It was my race. Yeah. It was one of those, everything fitted in perfectly. I got no boxing in on the first lap. Took a perfect position on the bend. Came to the kick at 150 to go, and as soon as I went, I knew that no one was going to get past. And it was that's the kind of great feel race. I think that's what was the cool thing.
That's what's important. Okay, the next one. So we had the best race. Now we've got the worst race, or the biggest mistake you did, either in preparation or during the race.
Right, biggest mistake. I went to do the Paris Marathon, and I trained really hard for it. I trained for a 2-hour 30 marathon, mm-hmm. and everything I did was right. All the training was perfect all the way through. No injuries, no problems, no flus, no colds. I went to Paris and got there on the Saturday, and the bus company that I was travelling with, the travel company, put us in a hotel, told us the bus would come and pick us up in the morning to take us into the Paris for the start, and the bus was late.
No.
So got to the start area, and we were right at the back of 40,000 people.
And you couldn't get because you
and I couldn't. There's no way I couldn't get to the front. No way I could get to the front. But stupidly, I set off trying to get to the front.
Did you still try
I
to
tried to
get...
dodge through and beat,
Uh-huh.
run through people. And it was daft because
Yeah.
there was no way that I could run. This wasn't going to happen. But in my brain, I was going, I need to be there. I need to get up to the front. I need to get to the front. I need to get to the front. So the stress of that, and then realising that the kilometre markers weren't mile markers. It's in France. So that compounded it because I'm looking at things going, that can't be that can't be right.
Fast.
I'm going way too fast, but I can't be going that fast. And then realised very quickly that it was kilometre markers, and then I had to recalibrate my brain to go, what time do I need to be per kilometre? And I got to about kilometre 30, and I knew that I was dead. I had lost everything, and I basically walked the last 10k. So it was a horrible experience.
So the question is, the next question is any lesson you learned from that?
Yeah, don't go with a travel company. Make your own, make your own preparation for it. No, I think it is about understanding what you're going to. If you're going to a big city marathon, you need to know what everything is that's going to happen, that you can then control what you can control.
Trying to predict.
I couldn't control the bus driver, and that lost me a potential really good marathon time, which I could then have talked about for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, I don't have that time now,
Yeah.
so it's gone.
But you've got a good story.
Yeah.
That's a good story. Okay, last one. Last question. It might be sport or life related or career related. Your biggest dream? Have you thought about this at all? Or you
I've had a few things that I felt I wanted to do. I wanted to do a job in sport, so I've got
So
that at the moment.
obviously
I'm
you're doing
doing that. I wanted to do something that would make a difference to people.
And you're doing this?
So I think that's part of my ethos, is about doing things that make a difference for others.
Is there anything, any race, anything this performance wise, or not anymore?
Yeah, I think at some point I would like to do Norseman. To say that I've now done Swissman, I would like to do Norseman at some point. I'm not too concerned about doing Celtman because I think my job is to make that event happen, not to do it. So, that would be a nice thing to do sometime. But I don't think I've got any major goals like that left that I haven't already done something with. But what I'd like to see is living somewhere in a nice warm climate where I can just get out and do what I want to do.
What you say? Scotland is amazing.
Yeah, but it needs to be warm.
That's true.
Or consistent. If it was consistent, it would be okay.
This would be nicer. Anyway, John, thank you very much.
No problem.
I think we'll wrap this up here. It's getting colder a little bit, and then I think we have to go, isn't it? It's that kind
It's
of
nearly
time.
that
It's
time.
nearly the time. So, thank you very much. And
No probs. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please share this podcast with your friends, and also leave a review on the iTunes or on any place where you've been listening. We are always also on the YouTube, so you can watch us on the YouTube channel. And one more thing. If you'd like to be on the Fitness Soul podcast, just get in touch. I'm always looking for people to have a conversation with. If you have something to say, if you are interested in a subject, or you just want to have a chat with me, just let me know and we'll get it sorted. Anyway, thank you one more time. Thank you very much for listening, and I speak to you soon. Bye.